Geographically, Florida is not a state. It is a slow-motion shipwreck. While the world looks at the neon of the coast, a $20 billion life support system is struggling to keep the interior from dissolving. This is not a wilderness. It is a surgical ward where the patient has already begun to slip away. This is the first managed transformation of an entire ecosystem. To understand the fragility of the American Southeast, one must look beneath the grass. The foundation of South Florida is Biscayne Limestone. It is not solid ground, it is a calcified sponge. If a cross-section of this rock were viewed under a microscope, it would reveal a honeycomb of interstitial voids, a brittle architecture formed over millions of years by the discarded shells of marine organisms. This rock does not hold water, it is water. For 10,000 years, a shallow river, 50 miles wide and only 6 inches deep, crawled across this limestone at a rate of a few hundred feet per day. This was the river of grass. But in the early 20th century, human ambition decided that this was a waste of space. The first act of violence against the landscape was the Tamiami Trail, a road that acted as a literal tourniquet, choking the flow of water to the south. This was followed by the construction of over 2,000 miles of canals and the massive pumping stations of the S-series. These behemoths of steel can move millions of gallons of water per second, creating what is now the most heavily engineered wetland on Earth. Today, every drop of water in the Everglades is a matter of administrative choice. It is a landscape governed by a permit to survive. But rainfall remains the system's erratic heart. When tropical storms saturate the interior, the engineering is pushed to its absolute limit. The machine attempts to control nature, yet it is a machine built upon a sponge. The only thing keeping the Atlantic Ocean from poisoning the drinking water of 6 million people is head pressure. It is the sheer weight of fresh water in the swamp pushing back against the sea. It is a silent subterranean war of gravity. If the pressure in the interior drops by even a fraction, the ocean does not come over the sea walls. It emerges from the floor. But as the sea level rises, the ocean has discovered a way to bypass the pumps entirely, moving inland as a chemical ghost that the sensors are only beginning to track. The order of South Florida is maintained by the Central and Southern Florida Project. It is a sprawling network of levees, spillways, and reservoirs that functions like a mechanical organ. The most critical of these is the Herbert Hoover Dike, a massive earthen wall 143 miles long that holds back the billions of gallons of water in Lake Okeechobee. If the dike were to fail, the catastrophe would be biblical. Yet the dike is made of the same porous earth it is meant to contain. To mitigate this risk, the state is currently constructing the EAA Reservoir, an 8-square-mile storage basin designed to function as a pressure valve for the entire state. It is a desperate attempt to use the weight of fresh water to shove the Atlantic Ocean back into the abyss. However, the logistics of this maintenance are exhausting. We are currently in a state of constant repair. The pumps require thousands of gallons of fuel. The gates require constant descaling from the mineral-heavy water. The levees must be reinforced against the very soil that supports them. It is a trillion-dollar treadmill. In our exploration of the Namibia Sperrgebiet, we saw how a state can use geography to enforce security. In Florida, the state uses engineering to enforce existence. But the cost of this existence is the erasure of the natural cycle. The Everglades no longer breathes. It is ventilated by a computer in a climate-controlled room in West Palm Beach. The landscape has been reduced to a set of variables: salinity levels, phosphorus parts per million, acre-feet of storage. We have turned a living entity into a spreadsheet, but spreadsheets cannot account for the slump, because while the engineers focus on the water levels, the very ground beneath the sawgrass is beginning to physically disappear. In the Namibia desert, the silence is made of sand. In the Everglades, the silence is white. Deep in the zone of inaccessibility near Cape Sable, one encounters the ghost forests. These are tens of thousands of acres of mangroves and cypress trees, standing like bleached skeletons against the horizon. This is the visual record of the managed transformation. It is not the result of fire or storm, but of a chemical execution. As sea levels rise, the salt water is forced into the porous limestone from below. The trees, unable to adapt to the rising salinity, die standing up. Their bark falls away, leaving white, sun-bleached ribs that stand as monuments to a lost ecosystem. But the death of the tree is only the beginning. When a cypress tree dies, the peat, the thick organic soil formed over millennia, begins to oxidize and collapse. The land literally slumps downward by several inches. In a region where elevation is measured in centimeters, this collapse is an invitation for the ocean to move further inland. This creates a geography of absence. As the peat dissolves, the freshwater marsh is replaced by brackish lagoons. The sawgrass dies. The birds flee. The landscape becomes a featureless mirror of the sky. This is the salt tide erasure. It is a process of geological simplification. We are spending $20 billion on restoration, but the term is a misnomer. One cannot restore a foundation that is turned to liquid. We are merely managing the retreat. We are building the EAA reservoir to provide the weight needed to slow the slumping, but it is a race against a rising tide that does not sleep and does not negotiate. And as the natural world retreats, the concrete scars we left behind during the Cold War are being revealed in ways that were never intended. Like the unrecorded logs of Labrador, the Everglades contains pockets of history that the order of the government has attempted to forget. Hidden in the sawgrass are the remains of Nike missile site HM-69. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, this was the front line of a nuclear standoff. Today, the site is a rusted husk. The silos are filled with brackish water. The barracks are overgrown with invasive vines. The military abandoned the site not because the threat of war ended, but because the swamp began to digest the technology. The humidity corroded the guidance systems. The limestone foundation shifted under the weight of the launchers. The salt air rotted the steel doors. Then there is the Aerojet-Dade facility. In the 1960s, a massive trench was dug here to test the world's largest solid-fuel rocket motor. It was a monument to the era of Apollo, a testament to the belief that human engineering could overcome any terrestrial limit. We were going to go to Mars from the Everglades. Today, the facility is a series of open concrete wounds. The rocket motors are long gone, but the infrastructure remains. A geography of the unnamed. These are the sunken monuments of a future that never happened. They represent the ultimate failure of human intention to override the environment. We thought we could conquer the swamp with nuclear fire and rocket engines. Instead, we left behind concrete ghosts that the sawgrass is slowly incorporating into its own architecture. These ruins serve as a warning. If a nuclear missile site and a space-age rocket facility could not withstand the slow, acidic grind of the Everglades, what hope do the seawalls of Miami have? The swamp does not fight. It simply waits for the rust to take hold. But as our machines fail and our monuments sink, a new kind of biological machine has moved into the vacuum, one that has no need for maintenance or fuel. In the Labrador Barrens, the tall ones are a legend. In the Everglades, the watcher is real. The Burmese python is the ultimate logistical failure of the 21st century. Released into a landscape that had no biological defense, these apex predators have effectively hollowed out the interior. The statistics are a record of an ecological collapse. In the southern regions of the park, Populations of raccoons, opossums, and bobcats have declined by more than 99%. The silence of the Everglades is now literal. The rustle of small mammals in the undergrowth has been replaced by an absolute heavy stillness. The python is the perfect resident for this managed transformation. It can go months without a meal. It is nearly invisible in the sawgrass. It has no natural predators. It has become the new order. The state attempts to manage the invasion through bounties and python challenges, but these are performative acts of control. We are finding snakes that have swallowed entire deer and alligators. They have reached the inland security zones, where they were never supposed to exist. This is a biological vacuum. As the mammals disappear, the food web collapses. The pythons are now moving toward the bird rookeries. The Everglades is being transformed from a vibrant, multi-layered ecosystem into a simplified landscape of grass, water, and snakes. But even the pythons seem to avoid certain corners of the interior. In 1972, Eastern Airlines Flight 401 crashed into the muck at over 200 miles per hour. 101 people were lost in the black water. For decades, airline crews reported unexplained occurrences tied to the wreckage. These stories are a reflection of a deeper truth. The Everglades is a landscape that encourages unease. It is a place that rejects human presence, whether that presence arrives in a boat or falls from the sky. Yet there is a human presence that has endured here for centuries, watching as the order of the United States government slowly drowns. To the order of West Palm Beach, the Everglades is a hydraulic problem. To the Miccosukee tribe, it is a relative. They have lived in the heart of this void for generations, residing on tree islands, small elevations of hardwood hammocks that represent the only dry ground in the interior. But these tree islands are disappearing. As the peat slumps and the water levels are manipulated to protect the coastal cities, the sacred ground of the Miccosukee is being submerged. To the tribe, the $20 billion restoration project is a tragedy of circular logic. They watch as the government moves water from one canal to another, attempting to fix a leak in a boat that is fundamentally broken. The managed transformation has a human cost. By prioritizing the surgical landscape of the coast, we are erasing the history of the people who actually understand the water. The Miccosukee remember the Everglades before it was a machine. They remember when the water was clear and the grass was healthy. Now they describe a water that smells of metal and salt, a liquid that no longer supports life, but merely transits it. This is the ultimate irony of the Everglades. We spend billions of dollars to keep the order of our civilization alive in a place that wants to be a swamp. We build dikes of dirt and reservoirs of concrete, while the people who lived in balance with the land are told that their islands must be sacrificed for the greater good of a failing infrastructure. We are the people on the treadmill. We are running faster and faster, spending more and more just to maintain the illusion of dry land. Because the final prediction for South Florida is not a sudden flood, but a quiet, inevitable surrender of the machine itself. Let us look at the logistics of the end. By the year 2100, the managed transformation will reach its conclusion. Most climate models suggest that the southern third of the Florida peninsula will no longer be a contiguous landmass. It will be an archipelago of ghost islands. The Tamiami Trail will be a series of bridges over a rising tide. The S-series pumps will be submerged, their steel guts finally corroded by the salt. The EAA reservoir, the centerpiece of our current ambition, will be a brackish lagoon. The order we have imposed for over a century will be retracted. The Everglades will return. It will no longer be managed. It will be a forbidden zone once again. The ghost forests will be gone, replaced by mangroves that have marched 30 miles inland. The pythons will be the monarchs of a kingdom that no human can navigate. Miami will be a Venice of the West, protected by massive seawalls that will eventually become artificial reefs. We spend so much energy trying to save the Everglades, but the land does not want to be saved by our engineering. It wants to be left alone. The transformation is only a tragedy for the humans who rely on the plumbing. For the landscape, it is a surgical removal of a parasitic presence. In Namibia, the desert ensures you remain an outsider. In Labrador, the tree line marks the boundary of the soul. In the Everglades, the water ensures you eventually disappear. If one looks at a satellite map of the United States at night, South Florida is a bright neon thumb. But look closer. Look at that dark, rectangular void in the center. That is the Everglades. It is a hole in our civilization, a place where our laws, our engineering, and our order go to die. The land remembers what it was before the canals. It remembers the slow, shallow crawl of the freshwater tide, and it is waiting for the pumps to stop. Do you believe we can engineer our way out of a geological inevitability? Or is the managed transformation just a way for us to feel in control while the ship goes down? The land is watching. And in the Everglades, the water is already rising to meet its gaze.